I always believed my life was nearly perfect. I had a solid job, a beautiful house, and a husband named James who, on the surface, seemed like everything a woman could ask for. We met back in college, and it felt like fate from the very beginning. James was smart, driven, and kind. Our bond seemed deep and genuine, built on mutual respect and understanding. We would laugh, talk endlessly, and spend our weekends discovering new places. To anyone watching, we looked like the perfect couple. But sometimes, the appearance of perfection hides the truth. I didn't realize just how deep the cracks had grown in our relationship until it was too late. The unraveling began on what seemed like an ordinary afternoon. I had just finished a long shift at work and was on my way to meet an old friend, Sarah. Sarah and I had known each other since high school. Though we hadn't stayed as close over the years, we still made time to catch up now and then. That day, we met at a cozy little cafe downtown. Sarah had always been the bold, adventurous type, someone who never let fear keep her from trying new things. She had traveled, lived abroad, met fascinating people. Her life always seemed a little louder and brighter than mine. As we talked, sipping coffee and catching up, she suddenly looked at me and said, "You've been living really safely, haven't you?" I was taken aback. "What do you mean?" I asked. She smiled and shrugged. "I just think you deserve more than a life of routines. Maybe it's time to do something unexpected, something that reminds you you're still alive." At first, I brushed her off. Sarah was always like that, chasing thrills and taking risks. But her words stuck with me long after we said goodbye. In the quiet moments of the next few days, I kept hearing her voice in my mind. Was I just going through the motions? Had I settled too easily into a life that looked good but felt hollow? I had everything I thought I wanted: James, a career, a home. But deep down, something was missing. And Sarah's words had opened a door I hadn't even realized was closed. At the time, I didn't realize it, but that quiet sense of something missing was slowly guiding me toward a moment I never saw coming. A few weeks after my chat with Sarah, something happened that would change the course of my life. It was a Friday evening, and James was away on a business trip. I was at home, casually going through some work emails, when my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from someone I hadn't heard from in years, Tom. Tom and I had worked together at my first job after college. He'd always been friendly, maybe even a little too charming at times, but we had lost touch after I left that company. His message was simple: "Hey, long time no talk. How have you been?" I smiled when I saw it. Without thinking too much, I replied. Before I knew it, we were caught up in an easy, flowing conversation, swapping stories about our old workplace, laughing at memories, and catching up on the people we used to know. There was something strangely comforting about reconnecting with him. It felt familiar, effortless, like picking up an old book you used to love. The chat quickly shifted from surface-level talk to deeper, more personal subjects. He opened up about his recent divorce and the rough patch he was going through. I found myself really listening, empathizing with him. His honesty gave him a softness that I hadn't noticed before. He seemed more grounded, more real. Then he mentioned he'd be in town the following week for a business event. He suggested we meet for coffee. I hesitated. I was married, after all. But it felt innocent, two old friends catching up. Nothing more, right? So I agreed. When we met at a local cafe, it was like no time had passed. Tom still had that relaxed energy, the kind that put everyone at ease. We talked, laughed, and revisited old memories, but something else was happening beneath the surface. I could feel it. The way he looked at me, the way he listened, it was different. It wasn't just friendship anymore. There was a pull I couldn't ignore. A part of me felt guilty even as I sat there smiling across the table. But another part of me, the one that had been quietly aching for something more, felt alive. He saw me in a way I hadn't felt seen in years. He made me feel, noticed, wanted, and that stirred something in me I hadn't felt in a long time. We parted that day with just a hug, but it stayed with me. My heart was pounding the whole way home, and I couldn't stop thinking about him. Our messages didn't stop after that meeting, they only grew more frequent, more personal. Every new message brought a small rush. Every conversation felt like a secret I didn't want to admit to myself. And just like that, I found myself crossing a line I had sworn I never would. I pulled away slightly, my thoughts clouded with confusion and guilt. But he didn't push me. He just looked at me with a softness that made my heart ache, not with regret, but with something far more dangerous, desire. I stood up, brushing my hands against my dress, trying to compose myself. I should go, I said quietly, almost to myself. Tom stood too, but he didn't try to stop me. He only nodded and said, I understand. But in his eyes, I could see the same storm that raged inside me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to James, listening to the soft rhythm of his breath, and I felt like a stranger in my own life. My heart was with a man I shouldn't want. My body beside the man I promised forever to. And my mind, it was at that bench, by the lake, still caught in a moment I couldn't forget. Days turned into weeks. I tried to cut off contact with Tom. I really did. I deleted our messages, blocked his number, promised myself I'd stay true. But he found a way to reach out, through email, through a mutual friend, even just passing by my office once. And each time, I let him back in. It wasn't long before we crossed the line. The emotional affair turned physical. The guilt I thought would destroy me somehow dulled with every stolen moment. I lived a double life, wife by day, something else by night. James was still oblivious. Or maybe he wasn't. Maybe he just didn't want to see it. Our marriage had grown cold, like two roommates who used to love each other but forgot how. I blamed him for the distance. I blamed him for not noticing I was drifting. But deep down, I knew, this was all me. One night, James came home early from a trip. I hadn't expected him, and Tom had just left an hour before. There was perfume in the air, wine glasses on the counter, and I could see James piecing it together. But he didn't ask. He just kissed me on the cheek and said, I'm home. That hurt more than any accusation ever could. Eventually, the truth had to come out. It always does. James found the messages, the pictures, the undeniable evidence of betrayal. And when he confronted me, it wasn't with anger. It was with heartbreak. Why? He asked, voice trembling. Was I not enough for you? And in that moment, I couldn't answer. Because it was never about him being enough, it was about me feeling like I wasn't enough. About chasing something to fill a void I didn't know I had. The aftermath was a blur of tears, screaming, therapy sessions, and silence. Lots of silence. James moved out. Tom disappeared, perhaps realizing the fantasy we shared couldn't survive reality. And I was left to pick up the pieces of the life I had shattered with my own hands. It's been over a year now. I still live in the same house. Still walk the same halls. But everything is different. The pictures are gone. The laughter, the warmth, the shared dreams, all replaced by echoes and apologies too late. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I had just walked away that day in the park. If I had reminded myself of the vows I made. But wondering doesn't change the past. Betrayal doesn't always come from a place of hatred. Sometimes, it comes from emptiness. From a yearning to feel seen. To feel alive. And in chasing that feeling, I lost everything that once mattered most. Instead, he simply smiled, his expression full of understanding. It's okay, he said softly. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to say something, anything, but my words felt stuck in my throat. What was I supposed to say? That I had been enjoying the closeness. That I had been feeling something I couldn't quite explain. We both stood up, and I realized just how close we were to crossing a line I might never come back from. I had already crossed it in my mind, even if I hadn't fully acknowledged it yet. I felt guilty, but I also felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. And that terrified me. As we said our goodbyes that day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. I didn't know what it meant or where it might lead, but I knew I couldn't pretend that nothing had happened. I couldn't ignore the fact that I had felt something real, something powerful. Over the next few days, my life began to spiral. Every time I looked at James, I felt the distance growing between us. It wasn't his fault. He was still the same kind, loving man he had always been. But I had changed. I had seen a side of myself I never knew existed, a side that yearned for something more, something different. I couldn't stop thinking about Tom. His messages, his voice, the way he made me feel, it all lingered in my mind like a secret I couldn't share. A temptation I couldn't escape. And the more I tried to resist it, the harder it became. I knew I had to make a decision. I had to choose between the life I had built with James and this new, dangerous path that was unfolding in front of me. But deep down, I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to make the right choice. What if I was just chasing a fleeting feeling? What if it was all just a temporary escape from my reality? But then again, what if it wasn't? The days that followed felt like an endless cycle of confusion, guilt, and an unexpected sense of exhilaration. I tried to keep living as if nothing had changed, going to work, cooking dinner for James, keeping up with the usual routine. But it was as if something inside me had been split in two. On one side, there was the stability of my life with James, the home, the memories, the quiet rhythm of our days. It was safe, dependable. On the other side, there was Tom. He had become a persistent presence in my thoughts, a gravity I couldn't break free from. I knew something had to give. The guilt was crushing. Every time I looked at James, I saw the man who had loved me through everything, who trusted me without question. And yet, I was betraying him, not just with actions, but with every secret thought I carried. He deserved better than that. He deserved honesty. But there was another part of me, one I had buried beneath years of routine and compromise, that had begun to stir. Around Tom, I felt alive, more like myself than I had in years. It was as if I had been sleepwalking through my life and suddenly woke up. And now, I couldn't reconcile those two versions of me. No matter how many times I told myself that it was all just a fleeting moment, a fantasy, something that wasn't real, I couldn't silence the truth inside me. I had crossed a line, and there was no erasing it. The boundaries of right and wrong had blurred, and I was standing at the edge of something irreversible. Then one evening, after a flurry of messages from Tom that left my emotions in turmoil, I made a decision. I needed to face the truth, not just about Tom, but about myself. It wasn't just about a man anymore. It was about the choices I had made and the kind of person I was willing to become in the aftermath. I waited for James to return from his trip. I knew I had to tell him. I owed him that much. But as the moment approached, I realized I didn't even know where to begin. The idea of hurting him, of destroying the life we had built, of watching the love in his eyes flicker out, that thought alone nearly broke me. How could I tell him that I had let someone else into our life in a way that should have been reserved only for him? How could I admit that I had been hiding something so deep, so damaging, that it could unravel everything we had built? When he walked through the door that evening, a knot tightened in my stomach. He smiled as his eyes met mine, his face lighting up with that familiar warmth, and for a fleeting moment, I wished I could just forget it all, bury everything that had happened, and pretend like nothing had changed. But I couldn't. I owed him the truth. "Hey, how was your trip?" I asked, aiming for casual, though my voice betrayed me with a slight tremble. "It was good. Long, but good," he replied, setting his bag down and walking toward me. He kissed my cheek, and I saw the fatigue in his eyes, an exhaustion that made me realize just how little I had been noticing him lately. My heart ached with guilt. I steadied myself, every word in my throat like broken glass. "James, there's something I need to tell you." His smile faded instantly, concern clouding his face. "What is it?" he asked softly. I took a breath, long and shaking. "I've been meeting with someone from my past. It's been happening for a while now." I watched the color drain from his face. He stepped back slightly, his brow creasing. "What do you mean, meeting with someone? Who?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "It's Tom," I said. The name felt heavy in my mouth, heavier still in the air between us. "He's been in touch with me and I don't know how to explain it, but it's been more than just catching up. I've been thinking about him. And, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen, but it did." Silence fell between us like a wall. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud and frantic in my ears, as I waited for his response. But James said nothing, not at first. He just stood there, staring at me as if he couldn't quite process what I had just confessed. His hands clenched at his sides, and in his eyes, I saw everything: hurt, confusion, betrayal. "I don't understand," he finally said, his voice quiet, almost a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you come to me?" "I didn't know how to," I said, my voice trembling. "I was afraid, James. I didn't want to hurt you, and I didn't want to admit to myself that I had let things go so far. But I've realized, I've been living in a lie. And it's not fair to you. You deserve more than this. You deserve someone who's fully committed to you." His gaze dropped to the floor. For a moment, I hoped he might say something, anything, but silence filled the space between us. He seemed lost in thought, his jaw tight. "I don't know what to say," he muttered, shaking his head slowly. This isn't something I expected. I thought we were happy. I thought I was doing everything right." "You are," I said quickly, stepping closer. "You are, James. You've always been good to me. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of what mattered. I let myself get caught up in something I shouldn't have. I don't want to lose you. He looked up then, and the sadness in his eyes nearly broke me. I don't know if I can forgive you for this, he said. I don't know if I can trust you again. His words landed like a punch to the gut. I had crossed a line, one that couldn't easily be undone. And I knew it. I couldn't erase what I'd done, couldn't take it back. All I could do was hope that, maybe, in time, he could find it in himself to forgive me. I understand, I whispered, tears filling my eyes. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I hope, someday, you can find it in you to forgive me. He turned away without a word and walked toward the kitchen, leaving me standing there, paralyzed by the weight of my own choices. What had I done? What had I thrown away, for a fleeting connection, a temporary escape? The days that followed were thick with silence. James became distant, his warmth gone, replaced with a coldness I had never felt from him before. I gave him space, knowing he needed time to process it all. But deep inside, I knew, nothing would ever be the same again. I had shattered the trust between us, and the road to healing suddenly felt long, steep, and uncertain. In the quiet that followed, I found myself reflecting on everything that had brought me to this point, the rush of excitement, the weight of guilt, the emotional whirlwind that once felt so intoxicating and real. But in hindsight, I saw just how much I had taken for granted, how many moments in my marriage I had overlooked or dismissed. I didn't want to lose James, but I had to accept that I couldn't undo the damage I'd done. Whether we would find a way back to each other or drift apart forever, I couldn't say. Still, through all of it, I had learned something I couldn't ignore. Even the most seemingly perfect lives can rest on fragile foundations. And when those foundations crack, the pain doesn't just belong to the other person, it becomes yours, too. Ending things with Tom didn't offer the clarity or closure I'd hoped for. Instead, it left me tangled in the aftermath, forced to sit with the consequences of choices I could never take back. And as I stood on the edge of what came next, uncertain and afraid, one truth echoed louder than the rest: life would never be as simple as it once seemed. His story is a reflection of how easily we can lose ourselves, not in someone else, but in the hollow spaces we forget to fill within. Sometimes, betrayal isn't about who we hurt. It's about who we've become. And healing, well, that begins only after the damage is done. Thank you for watching Infidelity Tales. These stories are raw, personal, and often painful, but they matter. They remind us that truth lives in the shadows of love and lies. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more real voices to light. Disclaimer: this story is based on real-life events, shared with permission. Names and details may have been altered to protect identities. The content is intended for mature audiences and serves as a narrative exploration of the emotional complexities within relationships.